Well, this month marks 1 year since Hurricane Helene roared through western North Carolina. Not only did that storm rip apart homes and flood roadways, it also cut off what so many people needed most in that moment, a connection. At one point, 900,000 homes and businesses were without power. The situation particularly dire in Avery, Mitchell, and Yancey counties, where 10% or fewer of cell towers are fully functioning. WCNC Charlotte's Tradisha Woodard spoke with cell providers and public safety officials about their efforts to restore power and what they're changing to better prepare next time.
After Helene had passed, many families were stranded without power, with entire communities left to wonder if anyone even knew they were there. I spoke with different cell phone providers and public safety officials, not only about their efforts to restore power, but also in the things they're changing to better prepare for next time. After Hurricane Helene's wind and rain, there was something else. The quiet. Phones stopped ringing. Texts wouldn't send. Many families, first responders, and neighbors were suddenly cut off from the world.
Not only were they sitting without power, but we had lost so many roads and bridges that folks couldn't leave the communities where they were.
Lillian Govus is the director of communications in Buncombe County. She says for many folks, radio became the only answer. When cell towers failed and power was gone, families clinched to whatever updates they could find on those fading airwaves.
Lots of people went to their cars and listened to the radio in order to get information from us. We were doing live updates twice a day. And so our local broadcast outlets were taking that information and running it live.
Phone providers like Verizon and AT&T say they had to come up with new ways to get people connected.
So Helene changed the game. It was more assets that were needed than what was stationed there. The impact to the network was greater than anything that we had dealt with historically.
They recall the numerous amounts of barriers when it came to restoration efforts.
Being able to get eyes in the field via helicopter was the only way that we could survey the area, because the waters hadn't receded enough for us to be able to drive vehicles in to be able to restore the network.
So the biggest barriers were safety. It was about getting people, personnel, and equipment out to temporarily restore in some places.
The FCC also sharing critical factors to resolving the issue.
Staffing is a number one issue on the ground at these emergency management centers, as well as the public safety answering points or emergency 911 call centers.
Since then, companies say they've taken steps to better prepare for next time.
We're working throughout the year to harden the network, to invest in generators and HVAC and making sure the batteries work.
We have gone to new vendors to get them to produce more of our assets that we needed, and added over hundreds of assets to our fleet in order to respond to storms like this going forward in the future.
The FCC also looking at better ways to working ahead.
Are we coordinating with the right state officials, the broadcasters, the other telecommunications emergency managers on the ground? And the third thing is looking at the FCC of how can we leverage our authorities and resources to best help our federal partners and state partners.
All to ensure one of the most powerful tools in a disaster isn't just a rescue truck, but also a working phone. Tradisha Woodard, WCNC Charlotte.
Definitely a wild time. I remember there was a period right after the storm hit and all the connectivity was gone, where the 911 out of Avery County had even posted on Facebook to email emergency calls to, like, they said, email this email address if you have an emergency, because they couldn't get phone calls.
Yeah, and we can't forget ham radio became a huge asset as well. That was one of the ways a lot of the relief got moved up there initially. Was ham radio operators were lifesavers, because they could communicate, just put up a temporary antenna and be able to talk to people. I know when we were doing Operation Airdrop, that was the number one way they were communicating with folks up there.
I met a gentleman at the Hickory Airport in those days after Helene, where he talked about how they helped find a missing child with their ham radio network.
Yeah, and that is a lifesaver, and they got those antennas up a lot quicker. So